Hello, good evening, everyone. Long time no see. 네, 2주를 스킵했는데요. Today we're reading Anne of Green Gables, Chapter 20, A Good Imagination Gone Wrong. All right, this is kind of a shorter chapter. 보겠습니다. Spring had come once more to Green Gables. The beautiful, capricious, reluctant Canadian spring, lingering along through April and May in a succession of sweet, fresh, chilly days with pink sunsets and miracles of resurrection and growth. The maples in Lover's Lane were red budded, and little curly ferns pushed up around the dryad's bubble. Away up in the barrens, behind Mr. Silas Sloane's place, the mayflowers blossomed out, pink and white stars of sweetness under their brown leaves. All the schoolgirls and boys had one golden afternoon gathering them, coming home in the clear, echoing twilight with arms and baskets full of flowery spoil. 네, 아이들이 하루, one afternoon, 한 오후에 꽃들을 이렇게 모아가지고 왔다는 거죠. I'm so sorry for people who live in lands where there are no mayflowers, said Anne. Diana says perhaps they have something better, but there couldn't be anything better than mayflowers, could there, Marilla? And Diana says if they don't know what they are like, they don't miss them. mayflower들이 얼마나 아름다운지 모르면 아, miss하지 않을 거다. 보고 싶어 하지 않을 거고, what do you call miss? But I think that is the saddest thing of all. I think it would be tragic, Marilla, not to know what mayflowers are like and not to miss them. 너무 비극적일 것 같아요. 그게 뭔지도 모르면. Do you know what I think mayflowers are, Marilla? I think they must be the souls of the flowers that died last summer, and this is their heaven. But we had a splendid time today, Marilla. We had our lunch down in a big mossy hollow by an old well, such a romantic spot. Charlie Sloane dared Artie Gillis to jump over it, and Artie did because he wouldn't take a dare. Nobody would in school. It is very fashionable to dare. Mr. Phillips gave all the mayflowers he found to Prissy Andrews, and I heard him say sweets to the sweet. He got that out of a book, I know, but it shows he has some imagination. I was offered some mayflowers too. 누가 나에게도 mayflower를 줬지만, but I rejected them with scorn. 경멸로 내가 거절을 했어요. I can't tell you the person's name because I have vowed never to let it cross my lips. 이름은 내가 얘기해 줄 수가 없어요. 왜냐하면 내가 그 사람의 이름이 나의 입술을 거쳐가지 않겠다고 맹세를 했기 때문에. We made wreaths of the mayflowers and put them on our hats. And when the time came to go home, we marched in procession down the road, 2 by 2, with our bouquets and wreaths, singing My Home on the Hill. Oh, it was so thrilling, Marilla. All Mr. Silas Sloane's folks rushed out to see us, and everybody we met on the road stopped and stared after us. We made a real sensation. Not much wonder. Such silly doings, was Marilla's response. After the Mayflowers came the violets, and Violet Vale was empurpled with them. 네, empurpled는 우리 purple라는 단어 아시죠? 근데 empurpled는 보라색이 되었다라는 뜻입니다. Anne walked through it on her way to school with reverent steps and worshipping eyes as if she trod on holy ground. Somehow, she told Diana, what I'm going through here, I don't really care whether anybody gets ahead of me in class or not. 나 여기 걸을 때는 길버트가 나를 더 길버트 이름은 하다가 항상 이렇게만 하죠. 나보다 더 잘하는지 안 하는지는 난 상관 안 해. But when I'm up in school, it's all different and I care as much as ever. There's such a lot of different Anns in me. I sometimes think that is why I'm such a troublesome person. There's such a lot of different Anns in me. 나의 안에는 정말 다양한 앤들이 너무 많은 앤들이 있는 것 같아. 그래서 내가 이렇게 맨날 어 아 혼나는 것 같아. 그리고 혼날 짓을 많이 하는 것 같아. If I was just the one Anne, it would be ever so much more comfortable, but then it wouldn't be half so interesting. One June evening, when the orchards were pink blossomed again, when the frogs were singing silverly sweet in the marshes about the head of the lake of shining waters, and the air was full of the savor of clover fields and balsamic fir woods, Anne was sitting by her gable window. She had been studying her lessons, but it had grown too dark to see the book, so she had fallen into wide-eyed reverie, looking out past the boughs of the Snow Queen, once more bestarred with its tufts of blossom. In all essential respects, the little gable chamber was unchanged. The walls were as white, the pincushion as hard, the chairs as stiffly and yellowly upright as ever. Yet the whole character of the room was altered. It was full of a new, vital, pulsing personality that seemed to pervade it and to be quite independent of schoolgirl books and dresses and ribbons, and even of the cracked blue jug full of apple blossoms on the table. It was as if all the dreams, sleeping and waking, of its vivid occupant had taken a visible, although immaterial form, and had tapestried the bare room with splendid, filmy tissues of rainbow and moonshine. Presently, Marilla came briskly in with some of Anne's freshly ironed school aprons. She hung them over a chair and sat down with a short sigh. She had had one of her headaches that afternoon, and although the pain had gone, she felt weak and tuckered out, as she expressed it. Anne looked at her with eyes limpid with sympathy. 네, 방이 전에와 똑같았지만 달라진 건 없었지만 이제는 다른 완전히 아, 그 꿈들이 거기 방 안에 있는 사람의 꿈들이 이 방을 페인팅한 것처럼 됐다는 거죠. Marilla가 she felt weak and tuckered out. tuckered out는 거의 잘 안 쓰는 말인데 완전히 지쳤다는 거죠. 오케이. 알리시아님 오셨어요. 안녕하세요. 아 피겨 다 끝났는지 모르겠어요. 더 보셔야 되는 거 아닌가 모르겠어요. Anyway, thank you for coming. I do truly wish I could have had the headache in your place, Marilla. I would have endured it joyfully for your sake. 내가 대신에 머리가 아팠더라면 좋았을 거예요. 내가 즐겁게 견뎠을 텐데. I guess you did your part in attending to the work and letting me rest, said Marilla. You seem to have got on fairly well and made fewer mistakes than usual. Of course, it wasn't exactly necessary to starch Matthew's handkerchiefs. And most people, when they put a pie in the oven to warm up for dinner, take it out and eat it when it gets hot instead of leaving it to be burned to a crisp. But that doesn't seem to be your way, evidently. 아, 파이를 도와줘서 고맙긴 한데 대부분의 사람들은 파이를 오븐에 넣어서 데우려고 오븐에 넣었을 때에는 주로 가지고 나와서 데워졌을 때는 꺼집어내서 먹는다. 그냥 태우는 게 아니라. Headaches always left Marilla somewhat sarcastic. 머리 아프면 비꼬는 아, 톤을 가졌다는 거죠. Oh, I'm so sorry, said Anne penitently. I never thought about that pie from the moment I put it in the oven till now, although I felt instinctively that there was something missing on the dinner table. I was firmly resolved when you left me in charge this morning not to imagine anything, but keep my thoughts on facts. 아무것도 상상 안 하고 그냥 딱 사실에만 생각을 하려고 했는데 I did pretty well until I put the pie in, and then an irresistible temptation came to me to imagine I was an enchanted princess shut up in a lonely tower with a handsome knight riding to my rescue on a coal black steed. So that is how I came to forget the pie. I didn't know I starched the handkerchiefs. All the time I was ironing, I was trying to think of a name for a new island Diana and I have discovered up the brook. It's the most ravishing spot, Marilla. There are two maple trees on it, and the brook flows right around it. At last it struck me that it would be splendid to call it Victoria Island because we found it on the Queen's birthday. Both Diana and I are very loyal. But I'm very sorry about the pie and the handkerchiefs. I wanted to be extra good today because it's an anniversary. 오늘은 정말 잘하고 싶었는데 왜냐하면 오늘은 기념일이거든요. Do you remember what happened this day last year, Marilla? No, I can't think of anything special. Oh, Marilla, it was the day I came to Green Gables. I shall never forget it. It was the turning point in my life. Of course, it wouldn't seem so important to you. I've been here for a year, and I've been so happy. Of course, I've had my troubles, but one can live down troubles. Are you sorry you kept me, Marilla? 네, 앤이 딱 이제 1년 됐다는 거죠. 그린 게이블스에 온 지. No, I can't say I'm sorry, said Marilla, who sometimes wondered how she could have lived before Anne came to Green Gables. No, not exactly sorry. If you finished your lessons, Anne, I want you to run over and ask Mrs. Barry if she'll lend me Diana's apron pattern. 네, 속으로는 어떻게 앤이 오지 않았더라면 어떻게 살았었는지, 어떻게 살았었는지 상상이 안 가는데, 아, 나를 입양해서 나를 데리고 있어서 후회하세요? 하니까 후회까지는 아니고 이렇게 답을 했어요. 그쵸? 자기 마음을 표현을 안 하는 거죠. 못 하는 건지. 네. 다이아나의 apron 이거를 만들게 패턴을 받아오라고. "Oh, it's too dark!" cried Anne. "Too dark? Why, it's only twilight." 그냥 황혼기인데. 황혼기 맞죠? "And goodness knows you've gone over often enough after dark." "I'll go over early in the morning," said Anne eagerly. "I'll get up at sunrise and go over, Marilla. What has got into your head now, Anne Shirley? I want that pattern to cut out your new apron this evening. Go at once and be smart too." 너무 깜깜하다고. "깜깜하지도 않은데." 나 내일 아침 일찍 갈게요." 그랬더니 "왜 이러는 거야?" "I'll have to go round by the road then," said Anne, taking up her hat reluctantly. "Go by the road and waste half an hour? I'd like to catch you. 30분이나 낭비하려고? 가면? "I can't go through the haunted wood, Marilla," cried Anne desperately. Marilla stared. "The haunted wood? Are you crazy? What under the canopy is the haunted wood?" 네, what under the canopy는 what in the world? 이거를 다르게 말한 거예요. 네, 이승만님 안녕하세요. 감사합니다. haunted wood. haunted는 귀신이 들린 forest란 뜻이죠. "The spruce wood over the brook," said Anne in a whisper. "Fiddlesticks! There is no such thing as a haunted wood anywhere. Who has been telling you such stuff?" "Nobody," confessed Anne. "Diana and I just imagined the wood was haunted. All the places around here are so commonplace. 너무 흔해서 우리가 상상했어요. We just got this up for our own amusement. We began it in April. A haunted wood is so very romantic, Marilla. We chose the spruce grove because it's so gloomy. Oh, we have imagined the most harrowing things. There's a white lady walks along the brook just about this time of the night and wrings her hands and utters wailing cries. And the ghost of a little murdered child haunts the corner up by Idlewild. It creeps up behind you and lays its cold fingers on your hand. So. 네, so는 이렇게. Oh, Marilla, it gives me a shudder to think of it. And there's a headless man stalks up and down the path, and skeletons glower at you between the boughs. Oh, Marilla, I wouldn't go through the haunted wood after dark now for anything. I'd be sure that white things would reach out from behind the trees and grab me. 난 이제 절대로 못 가요. 깜깜할 때는. Did ever anyone hear the like? 네, ejaculated 하는 거는 완전히 외쳤다는 거예요. 다시 해볼게요. Did ever anyone hear the like? Ejaculated Marilla, who had listened in dumb amazement. Dumb은 말을 못했다는 뜻입니다. Anne Shirley, do you mean to tell me you believe all that wicked nonsense of your own imagination? 너가 상상한 걸 지금 네가 믿는다는 거야? Not believe exactly, faltered Anne. At least, I don't believe it in the daylight. 화날 때는 안 믿어요. But after dark, Marilla, it's different. That is when ghosts walk. 하지만 어두워졌을 때는 달라요. 어두워졌을 때는 귀신들이 걷잖아요. There are no such thing as ghosts, Anne. Oh, but there are, Marilla, cried Anne eagerly. I know people who've seen them, and they are respectable people. Charlie Sloane says that his grandmother saw his grandfather driving home the cows one night after he'd been buried for a year. You know Charlie Sloane's grandmother wouldn't tell a story for anything. 찰리의 할머니가 귀신을 봤는데 자기의 남편 죽은 남편을 봤다는데 그 찰리의 할머니는 그 얘기를 꾸밀 사람이 아니에요. She's a very religious woman. 종교적인 여자예요. And Mrs. Thomas's father was pursued home one night by a lamb of fire with its head cut off hanging by a strip of skin. He said he knew it was the spirit of his brother and that it was a warning he would die within 9 days. 9일 안에 죽을 거라고 동생이 혹은 형이 경고해 주는 거였는데 he didn't. 죽진 않았지만 but he died 2 years after. So you see, it was really true. And Ruby Gillis says 그 9일 안에 죽진 않았지만 2년 후에는 죽었기 때문에 사실이라는 걸 알 수 있죠. And Shirley, interrupted Marilla firmly, I never want to hear you talking in this fashion again. I've had my doubts about that imagination of yours right along, and if this is going to be the outcome of it, I won't countenance any such doings. You'll go right over to Barry's and you'll go through that spruce grove just for a lesson and a warning to you. And never let me hear a word out of your head about haunted woods again. 내가 너의 상상력 때문에 내가 걱정을 했는데 이런 식으로 이런 결과가 나올 거면 내가 인제 더 이상 내가 못 참아 줘. 당장 가서 어 이번에 교훈이 돼야 돼. You have to learn your lesson. Anne might plead and cry as she liked, and did, for her terror was very real. Her imagination had run away with her, and she held the spruce grove in mortal dread after nightfall. But Marilla was inexorable. 하지만 Marilla는 완강했다. 아무리 빌어도 절대로 안 된다고. 당장 가라고. She marched the shrinking ghost seer down to the spring and ordered her to proceed straightway over the bridge and into the dusky retreats of wailing ladies and headless specters beyond. Oh, Marilla, how can you be so cruel? Sobbed Anne. What would you feel like if a white thing did snatch me up and carry me off? 정말로 하얀 거가 나를 안고 가면은 어떡하시려고 그래요? I'll risk it. 내가 위험을 무릅쓸게, said Marilla unfeelingly. You know I always mean what I say. I'll cure you of imagining ghosts in such places. March, now. Anne marched. That is, she stumbled over the bridge and went shuddering up the whole horrible dim path beyond. Anne never forgot that walk. Bitterly did she repent the license she had given to her imagination. 내 상상력을 너무 권한을 많이 준 거를 너무 그냥 아무렇게나 상상한 거를 후회 아주 쓰게 bitterly repent 후회했습니다. The goblins of her fancy lurked in every shadow about her, reaching out their cold, fleshless hands to grasp the terrified small girl who had called them into being. A white strip of birch bark blowing up from the hollow over the brown floor of the grove made her heart stand still. The long drawn wail of two old bows rubbing against each other brought out the perspiration in beads on her forehead. The swoop of bats in the darkness over her was as the wings of unearthly creatures. When she reached Mr. William Bell's field, she fled across it as if pursued by an army of white things, and arrived at the Barry kitchen door so out of breath that she could hardly gasp out her request for the apron pattern. 도착했을 때 다이아나 집에서 도착했을 때 하도 숨이 차가지고 겨우 apron pattern 달라고 했어요. Diana was away so that she had no excuse to linger. The dreadful return journey had to be faced. Anne went back over it with shut eyes, preferring to take the risk of dashing her brains out among the boughs to that of seeing a white thing. 네, 눈 감고 갔대요. 완전히 dashing her brains out. 그 가지들에게 뇌가 찔려도 그거를 차라리 그 리스크를 take 했다는 거죠. white thing, 귀신을 보는 것보다. When she finally stumbled over the log bridge, she drew one long shivering breath of relief. Well, so nothing caught you, said Marilla unsympathetically. Oh, Marilla chattered. chattered는 이빨을 이렇게 했다는 거예요. 너무 무서워서 혹은 추울 때도 이렇게 하죠. I'll be contented with commonplace places after this. 네, 이제부터는 흔한 장소들에 만족할 거예요. 네. 이렇게 해서 chapter 20가 끝났습니다. 네. 아 레이첼 님. 네. 이제 끝났는데 오셨어요. 네. 그래도 나중에 보셔도 되니까. 네. Next week I will be doing chapter 21 and that's a little bit longer chapter. Do we have any questions or comments? 네. Alright. 없으시다면 네. 오늘은 챕터가 짧아서 일찍 끝났습니다. I will 네. 끝났어요. I will see you next week. 다음 주에는 chapter 21을 보겠습니다. 네. Good night everyone. Have a great evening. 감사합니다. Good night.